Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Councilmember Bonds asked several of the questions that I wanted to ask. Deputy Mayor Kihn, Chancellor Ferebee, it's great to see you. I'm going to start with you, Deputy Mayor Kihn. I think the subtext to a lot of what we're talking about is the reality that we have too many schools in the district, and we're continuing to try to split a finite amount of money into smaller, and ever smaller pieces. And the challenging job that you all have is to come here and justify it. What efforts have you taken to have greater coordination across LEAs, namely our charter sector, so that we don't keep having these same debates around splitting the pool of money in infinite smaller ways?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. Good to see you. I think you're asking a very important question. I'm not sure that everyone who's a family member, parent in the city feels like we have too many schools. As you know, our vision for public education in the city is that we have a strong set of neighborhood public schools that parents can opt into, complemented by citywide schools, which are run either by DCPS or any of the other 67 or so LEAs. Currently, 25% of children attend their neighborhood school and 75% choose other schools that are citywide in nature, both DCPS and charter. So I'm not sure we could necessarily agree as a city that we have too many. At the same time, I do think we have to be very conscious of the size of our schools, and we want to make sure that we don't have too many, let me say, small schools across the city, because that can indeed lead to costs that we might not choose to bear, and I think that's what you're implying as a city. So we have done an extraordinary amount of work to coordinate with the Public Charter School Board, with DCPS, with LEAs on a number of important initiatives, including taking a look at how we can determine our need for any additional schools that we might have. So
do you think we have too many schools in the district?
Right now, I don't think we have too many schools. I think it's critically important that we continue to ensure our neighborhood schools are strong. So in that sense, I don't think we have too many neighborhood schools. I think families would love to ensure they could send their kids to schools close to home. Not everyone in the city believes that they can. So I think there's a question on the table about our neighborhood school portfolio, and that's, do we have enough of them?
Well, I'll say I think we have too many schools. I think a lot of people would agree with that. There is a difference, as you know, in the number of schools versus the quality of schools. I would agree with you that many parents would agree the quality of our schools are not at the level that their children deserve. Full stop. I'm thinking of the letter that you sent to the charter board some years ago, essentially suggesting, hey, we should be more thoughtful around continuously opening new schools. And that is the spirit with which I'm asking, because while I appreciated that letter, and I think at that time you had a very strong rebuke from the charter sector, the question still remains, what are we doing for there to be coordination to improve quality of our schools so that we do not feel the need to continue to onboard new schools?
Yeah, I'm happy to report a couple very quick things on that, Councilmember. The first is there was a strong rebuke from some portions of the charter sector, but not all. And the Charter School Board, as you, I'm sure, are very aware, in its process now of looking for applications for any new schools, has implemented an entirely new standard for what they describe as a needs-based assessment. And I think that comes directly from the work that we've been doing together as a city to coordinate and look at, if there are any new schools to open, what specific needs are they filling? And I think that's a sign of real progress in the direction I think that you are suggesting.
Yes, thank you for that. Chancellor, I'm going to turn to you regarding specific questions on the budget. So I was shocked to hear that you are not aware of the increase, if there will be an increase in the UPSFF. That is my understanding, right?
Correct. We do not have the UPSFF at this time.
But school budgets will be released this week.
That is the plan, correct.
And so will you learn about the potential increase before school budgets are released?
Yes, so the UPSFF will be applied to our budget. When that occurs, then we're able to produce the budgets that go to schools and local school advisory teams.
So this week, budgets will be released, but before that, at some point, you will be made aware of the increase in the UPSFF.
That is correct.
Got it. I will also say, and I say this understanding that it may not be a unilateral decision, that I'm a bit troubled that it seems that DCPS is just deciding which rules they're going to follow. That's what it appears to me as a new council member. We're just here about procurement issues, and it seemed clear that DCPS was skirting outside of the rules. And this is another example where it seems like DCPS is saying, well, we don't really like that, so we're not going to follow that. That's less a question, more of an observation that I'm hoping that through stronger collaboration we can improve over time. When those budgets are released, and this is something that Councilmember Bonds was getting at, you said 3% of the overall budget would be allocated to central office. Is that correct?
Yes, so it's actually below 3%. It's actually 2.7%, and so that is the administrative services, the supports we provide. So there are a number of compliance positions, human resource functions also fall in that category. The second largest category then is our school support. So these are individuals that are held off school budgets centrally, but they support schools directly. And then there's the school budgets, which is in about 84% of our school's budget.
And a large part of that, I know, are contracts with the school district, whether it be assessments, vendors, et cetera. Do you have a ballpark of what percentage that makes of the central office budget?
Yeah, I couldn't give you that today. It fluctuates.
Okay.
The number of contracts that schools implement on, and then also centrally, we also have a number of contracts as well that changes.
One of the things that has been a pain point are discretionary positions. And you know there has been a lot of discussion around librarians, and then it wasn't made a discretionary position. Can you share which positions will be discretionary in this year's budget?
Yeah, so that information will go to schools as a part of their budget of what's flexible, what's not flexible. Our plan is to continue with our same status as it relates to school librarian in terms of being a protected position. That is done to ensure that there are core services that are consistent across schools and balancing the desire for expanding autonomy as well.
Yep.
And it's something that we review annually. There are scenarios in which schools can make requests for position adjustments.
Yep.
That is reviewed by their supervisors, and then a decision is made in terms of how those positions are allocated.
Are there any positions that were required last year that will be discretionary this year? And if so, which?
I don't anticipate significant changes in those categories for the fiscal 24 year.
So schools should not see changes in positions made discretionary.
Yeah, I don't anticipate much changes in those categories.
Okay. Immigrant students coming to the district, and we know that there has been an ongoing crisis with the publicity stunts from governors in the South. I know many Ward 5 schools have received students, namely a school like Langdon. In what ways will the budget account for these students and the support that they need? Because what I've heard this year is that many of our schools have absorbed these students, yet have not received additional funds, supports, instructional materials to accommodate the need that these students have.
Right, so there's two ways in which we support schools. And so we have an enrollment reserve that is designed to be infused in schools when needs change during the school year. As the system of right, we accept students all throughout the school year, and sometimes needs to change accordingly, where we had unique situations, scenarios this year. And so we provided those resources to schools accordingly. The second way that happens, and I'm glad you asked that question, because at the center of our model is this great sense of equity in ensuring that we just don't allocate dollars to school based on amount of what you got last year, but it's based on the needs of the students in the building. And so because of that, when schools see a dramatic increase in language learners, we account for that with the additional weights that are provided to schools to get more dollars to support those schools that we know have greater need based on that population. So those are the two ways in which schools would receive additional resources.
Mr. Chairman, could I have 60 more seconds?
Sure.
So in the budget narratives, will it be spelled out which schools are receiving additional funds for immigrant students?
So in the budget narrative, it will include information about their weighted dollars. It won't specifically call out immigrant families or immigrant students.
Got it. And then last thing in my remaining 30 seconds, SROs, public safety, security personnel, that had been once covered by central office and then put on the schools. What will be the approach this year in this year's budget?
Yeah, so they won't see that. That'll be covered centrally.
That will be covered centrally.
Correct.
And will that adhere to the drawdown of SROs in schools?
Yes, it is aligned to the drawdown of SROs in schools.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chancellor, Deputy Mayor Kihn, and others that are there. I am just jumping into the hearing, so it's possible that some of the questions I asked may have been discussed earlier, so apologies in advance on that. But based on the conversation I heard, the school budgets are going to be submitted this week. Is that correct?